Paradigm-shifting technologies, fear of the unknown, otherworldly phenomena. Today we venture into the genres that tackle these subjects. We'll start with science fiction. Sci-fi in literature was prevalent in the 19th century, where it was often used as a vessel for modernist utopianism, a vision of a tomorrow where technology will save us. However, three authors in particular shifted the course of things and made sci-fi what it is today. These three authors are Mary Shelley, Aldous Huxley, and H.P. Lovecraft. Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, a story of a man who took science too far. He decided to play God, and in doing so, created something that was perhaps never meant to exist in our world. This work has had a huge impact on sci-fi as a whole, and arguably contributed to the creation of the monster genre as well, which deserves its own video. But when you look at pop culture today, from Halloween costumes to Star Wars, it is easy to see the profound influence it has had. This is strike one against the futurist utopia. Sometimes there is a line not meant to be crossed. Science allows the breaching of this threshold, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. If you want to see a great film adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, I highly recommend the one from 1994. It seems to be relatively disliked and considered cheesy, but I think it is a great adaptation of the story nevertheless. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley is strike two against the mindset that hyper-technological advancement and progress at any cost is a good idea. It presents the very utopia that early sci-fi authors aspired to. However, it turns out that when this utopia is achieved and brought to its logical conclusion, a lot is lost in the process. Brave New World discusses what it means to be human. If technology rids us of love, suffering, and spirituality, what do we have left? The people of this utopia cannot handle basic facts of reality. They cannot comprehend attachment and exclusivity. They have traded meaning and purpose for easy-to-swallow tablets and ceaseless pleasure-seeking. This is the power of sci-fi. It can show us the looming threat of an upcoming future. More likely, however, it actually portrays the world we already live in, giving us an outsider's perspective on our own society. This novel has been another work that has been hugely influential for pop culture. I have made a video comparing Brave New World to the Star Wars prequels, which I will link in the comments for those curious. Brave New World also contributed to the dystopia genre, which again deserves its own video. I haven't particularly cared for the film and television adaptations of Brave New World, but I will say, failing that, the next best thing is the Black Mirror episode 15 Million Merits, which I think is the closest thing to capturing this sci-fi dystopia outside of Huxley's masterpiece. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. The third and final strike against the idea that science is our savior is H.P. Lovecraft. He created the cosmic horror genre, which is also known as Lovecraftian horror, which shows the scope of his influence. At the Mountains of Madness is one of his many cosmic horror tales. In it, a small group go on an expedition to Antarctica. They are attacked by a creature that defies all known scientific categorization. It has wings, tentacles, and appears to be part made of plant matter. As they delve further in, they discover an ancient city. Then they go underground and make various unsettling discoveries. The power in this, and other Lovecraft books, is that they show the insignificance of human knowledge. We get arrogant and think we know everything, but our scientific knowledge is just a drop in the ocean. There is a great disillusionment and powerlessness present in cosmic horror. At the end of Mountains of Madness, the protagonist laments that there is nothing he can do. If he tells people what he saw in Antarctica, they either won't believe him, or they will send others there to catastrophic results. Keeping it secret is futile too. He cannot unknow what he has learned. There is something deeply psychological about the genre. Both sci-fi and cosmic horror make you think. The Frank Darabont movie, based on the Stephen King work The Mist, is a fantastic example of cosmic horror. The white fog encapsulates everything, and people are dying after it approaches. People cannot see what creatures lie in wait for them, but there are many Lovecraftian monsters inside. Interestingly, There are also social thriller elements, as there is conflict and politics between all the people trapped inside the grocery store. Eventually, the main characters decide to take their chances with the monsters rather than the people, which is another interesting dimension in itself. And in true cosmic horror fashion, the ending's horror is purely psychological. If you know, you know. The Thing, 1982, is perhaps an even better example. An alien terror has disguised itself as a human, but no one knows who is human and who is the Thing. There are two things that make this movie work. First is the gross practical special effects. Generally speaking, cosmic horror works best in written form, as often the intrigue and suspense is lost when you see the creature, and it is better to just have it completely unseen. Here, this is not the case. Since the creature constantly changes and is a real effect, it never loses its fear factor. The second reason is you cannot trust anyone, since the Thing could potentially be everyone. Reality is completely reshaped. Everyone is a suspect, and everyone suspects you. And even the ending captures that feeling of unsettling ambiguity. There is no closure in cosmic horror. Nothing is ever truly known. Cosmic horror has seeped into other genres as well. For video games, there is an amorphous deity in Skyrim called Hermaeus Mora, who has his own realm, straight out of a Lovecraft book. Bloodborne has a cosmic horror aesthetic throughout the entire game, and even Among Us has a similar premise to The Thing, even if it is more lighthearted. In music, there is a genre called technical death metal, which is essentially cosmic horror as a sound. And as a general aesthetic, the genre has gained massive popularity, to the point where you can now buy a Cthulhu pop figure if you are so inclined. Maybe at one time, sci-fi represented an optimistic view of tomorrow. Today, it asks us what kind of tomorrow we are trying to bring about, and if it's even worth it. Will we play God and regret it? Will we lose what it means to be human? Are we even capable of doing things with our own hubris? Or are we just putty in the hands of monstrous gods? Sci-fi is meant to humble us. Star Trek has always been a hit-and-miss show for me. At its worst, it can seem laughably dated and utopian, as the future it paints seems further away from us than ever. But at its best, it can really humble us and make us think. Jean-Luc Picard is the earnest futurist. He is optimistic and adheres rigidly to his principles. However, he is often challenged and forced to be humbled. The character Q is a being beyond Picard's comprehension. He has godlike abilities, and he uses these powers to poke fun at Picard's earnestness and serious disposition. He messes with him. Q doesn't take anything seriously, even when he puts people's lives at risk. But often Q has a purpose. He exists to teach Picard lessons. If he weren't so comedic, Q would almost be a creature of cosmic horror himself. However, what really is in fact is the Borg. The ultimate lesson for Picard is learned when Q transports the Enterprise, Picard's ship, to the other side of the galaxy. There, Picard encounters the Borg. The Borg stand in defiance of all Picard stands for. Picard believes in autonomy, self-determination, and individual freedom. The Borg are hive mind. They all work together as a single unit, and each individual has no agency of his own. Picard is also a diplomat. He believes in pursuing peace and talking through disagreements. The Borg have no interest in peace or discussion. They have one single goal: to assimilate everyone and everything. The Borg also have a military advantage and can adapt to new dangers quickly, so attacking them also proves useless. As the Borg say, resistance is futile. You will be assimilated. Q saves Picard last minute, but the episode ends on an ominous note. The Borg are still out there. I think it's no surprise that the Borg are one of the most memed and most memorable things about Star Trek. They have a strong cosmic horror element to them. The idea of losing our agency, our individuality, and our freedom is deeply disturbing to anyone that hasn't already been assimilated, of course. Picard is also told by Q that the ultimate discovery is not the material. It's not mapping stars and charting nebula. It's discovering the unknown possibilities of existence. It's being able to completely change your perspective to see a much larger picture. Sci-fi is about thinking beyond your meager point of view, and cosmic horror allows one to deal with the existential crisis that comes from such profound revelations. Oh, and by the way, this is a cake. Live long and prosper. As always, we continue our trek towards occulturation. No meme and no genre is without meaning.